Rachel Morgan was running out of time, and she knew it. Her daughter Zoe's small legs couldn't keep up, her pink backpack bouncing with every step, and the final boarding call for the flight to Chicago was already echoing through the terminal. Somewhere behind that gate was the interview that was supposed to save her life. She had no idea that the real thing waiting for her that day wasn't behind gate C42 at all. It was underneath a seat, sealed in wax, left there by a stranger who already knew her name. "Mommy, I can't run anymore," Zoe whimpered. Rachel scooped her up despite her screaming shoulders and kept moving. She had planned everything down to the minute: the subway, security, the walk to the gate. But the morning had fallen apart piece by piece. The babysitter cancelled at dawn. Zoe spilled juice everywhere and needed a full outfit change. Then the subway stalled underground for 20 minutes with no signal to warn anyone. By the time Rachel rounded the corner to the gate, the jetway door was already closed, and a gate agent was quietly pulling the Boston to Chicago sign off the display. "Wait, please, we're on this flight," Rachel begged. The agent, Patricia, gave her the kind of practiced, apologetic smile that never quite reaches the eyes. "I'm so sorry, The doors have been closed for 4 minutes. I can rebook you for tomorrow's 6:10 flight, but you wouldn't land until 7:45 Chicago time." Rachel's interview at Mason & Blackwell, one of Chicago's top marketing firms, started at 9 a.m. There was no way to make it from O'Hare to downtown in time. Months of preparation, gone in 4 minutes. "Mommy, are we going to miss your important meeting?" Zoe asked, her wide brown eyes, so much like her father's, full of worry. Rachel forced a smile. "It's okay, sweetheart. Sometimes things just don't work out the way we plan." Then, because she had nothing left to lose, she turned back to Patricia. "Is there anything else tonight? Any airline? I'll pay whatever it costs." The words left her mouth before she remembered how little was actually left in her bank account. Tom, her husband of 9 years, had walked out 14 months earlier, and since then Rachel had been holding their lives together on freelance graphic design income alone. Patricia typed for a moment. "There's a connection through Detroit. You'd land at 11:45 tonight. It's the last option." Rachel nodded. They'd take it. While they waited, Zoe curled into the airport seats, exhausted and hungry, and reached underneath the row beside her. "Mommy, there's something stuck under here." She pulled free a cream-colored envelope, sealed with real navy wax, stamped with a corporate emblem. Written across the front in confident handwriting, "For whoever needs this today." Rachel almost dismissed it as someone's lost mail, until Zoe pointed out the strip of tape still clinging to the underside of the seat. It hadn't been dropped. It had been placed there. On purpose. For a stranger to find. Curiosity won. Rachel broke the seal. Inside was a single sheet of the same cream paper, embossed with the logo of Horizon Enterprises, one of the largest technology companies in the country. The letter had no greeting. It simply began, "To whoever finds this, I've been sitting at this gate for 3 hours, watching people rush past, most of them stressed or resigned. I've been thinking about how one small moment, missing a flight, a chance encounter, can completely change the direction of a life. 27 years ago, I missed a flight from this very terminal. I was devastated. I had an interview I thought would define my career. Instead, I spent the night in this airport talking to a stranger who convinced me to build something of my own instead. That missed flight changed everything. Today I'm leaving 10 letters like this one around the terminal, for people who might be living through their own moment of what feels like bad luck. Enclosed is a ticket to our Innovation Summit in Chicago this weekend, a $5,000 seat. If you decide to come, find me. I'll be the one in the blue tie with the small white sailboats. Sometimes the wind that blows us off course takes us exactly where we need to go. Daniel Wright, CEO, Horizon Enterprises." Tucked behind the letter was a ticket to the Horizon Innovation Summit, at the very same hotel where Rachel had already booked a room for her now-ruined interview. She stared at it, stunned. Was this real, or an elaborate joke? She searched Daniel Wright's name on her phone. Photo after photo showed a distinguished man in his 50s, salt and pepper hair, kind eyes, and in nearly every picture, the same blue tie covered in tiny white sailboats. Her pulse picked up. If the summit started tomorrow, she wouldn't even need her original flight. The disaster of the day had just cracked open into something else entirely. "Mommy, why are you smiling?" Zoe asked. "I thought we were having a bad day." Rachel looked at her daughter and felt something she hadn't felt in months. "Hope. I think our luck might be changing, sweetie." But hope is a dangerous thing to trust, and Rachel had no idea yet just how far this stranger's letter would reach into her own family's past. She left Mason and Blackwell a careful voicemail asking to reschedule, telling herself it was a calculated risk, not a reckless one. By the time she and Zoe touched down in Chicago near midnight, Zoe was fast asleep against her shoulder. The Grand Milan Hotel was every bit as intimidating as Rachel feared: marble floors, doormen in white gloves, the kind of place she'd only booked because Mason and Blackwell recommended it, stretching her card to its absolute limit to look the part. At check-in, the receptionist glanced at her screen and smiled. "I see you're here for the Horizon Summit. Will you need our complimentary in-room child care?" Rachel froze. "How did you know I'm here for the summit?" The woman looked puzzled. "It's linked to your reservation." But Rachel had booked this room weeks earlier, long before she'd ever found that letter. Someone had connected the two. Someone had known she was coming before she did. Upstairs, the suite was far more luxurious than anything Rachel could normally afford: a separate bedroom, a skyline view of Chicago, and a comfort that made her more uneasy than relaxed. Once Zoe was tucked in, Rachel opened her laptop and searched everything she could find on Daniel Wright and Horizon Enterprises. A small tech startup 25 years ago, now a powerhouse famous for its culture and its founders' quiet philanthropy, scholarships and mentoring programs built specifically for single parents trying to break into tech. The coincidences were piling up faster than she could explain them. A knock interrupted her thoughts. A hotel employee stood outside with a garment bag. Compliments of the summit organizers. All attendees receive a welcome package. Inside was a black cocktail dress in exactly her size, a pair of elegant heels, a name badge already printed with Rachel Morgan, creative director, and a handwritten note. "Rachel, we're delighted you'll be joining us. The opening reception is tomorrow at 8. Looking forward to meeting you. Daniel Wright." This wasn't luck anymore. Daniel Wright knew exactly who she was. The only question left was why a billionaire CEO would go to this much trouble for a struggling single mother he'd never met. Morning came fast. Rachel dropped Zoe off at the hotel's kids club, a thrilled 7-year-old convinced she'd stumbled into a princess hotel, and walked into the summit's conference center feeling like an outsider among executives who all seemed to know each other. During a coffee break, a woman with curly hair and bright green glasses struck up conversation. First time at the summit. Her badge read Mia Jackson, Director of Creative Strategy, Horizon Enterprises. When Rachel admitted she wasn't even sure why she was there and explained the letter, Mia's expression shifted, not surprise, but recognition. "So you're one of Daniel's finds. That explains the buzz." Before Rachel could ask what that meant, Mia was pulling her toward a breakout session. "Trust me, you need to see this one." The session was called Emerging Trends in Visual Marketing, led by a sharp, confident man named Jake Peterson, Horizon's creative director. 15 minutes in, Jake pulled up a slide that stopped Rachel's heart cold. It was her own work, a social media campaign she designed for a tiny Boston coffee shop, one of her proudest projects. This campaign increased engagement by 340%, Jake said, unaware the designer was sitting in his audience. 2 more of her projects followed, a charity website, a jewelry campaign, each one dissected with details only the designer herself would notice. Rachel sat frozen as strangers applauded work she'd made alone, at her kitchen table, for clients who could barely pay her. After the session, she found her voice. "Those were my designs," she told Jake. His face shifted from confusion to disbelief. "You're Rachel Morgan. It's an honor. Let's talk at lunch, it'll all make sense soon, I promise." But nothing about this was making sense yet. If anything, the mystery was only getting bigger, and what Rachel would learn over that lunch table was about to connect her entire life to a woman she had never even met. At lunch, Mia introduced her to the table as the designer I was telling you about, and a silver-haired woman across from her, Barbara, Horizon's chief of operations, laughed warmly. And you think finding that letter was an accident? Daniel doesn't do anything by accident. Before Rachel could press further, the room quieted as Daniel Wright himself took the stage. Same kind eyes from the photos, same blue tie with its tiny white sailboats. After his welcome remarks, Rachel finally got her answers. Horizon, Mia explained, had been quietly tracking independent talent for years. Rachel's coffee shop campaign had shown up in their analytics 6 months earlier as a wild outlier. Engagement numbers far beyond anything her tiny client budget should have produced. They'd been watching her work ever since. Then why not just call me? Rachel asked. Why the letter, the theater of it all? Mia's answer was simple. That's Daniel. He believes how someone responds to an unexpected opportunity tells you everything about who they are. Some people never show up. Some show up with demands. He's looking for the ones who show up curious. Even her hotel booking hadn't been an accident. Daniel made sure every logistical obstacle disappeared once someone found one of his letters, so nothing could stand between real talent and the door. By the evening reception, Rachel barely recognized the woman in the mirror. Black dress, soft waves, the quiet confidence of someone who belonged. Daniel found her near the edge of the ballroom. I've been hoping to thank you, she said, for the invitation. I'm glad you found it, he replied. Not everyone does. When she admitted she now knew Horizon had been watching her for months, Daniel didn't flinch. Traditional recruiting misses too much talent, especially people with complicated lives. Single parents. Caregivers. People who can't follow a conventional path but have extraordinary ability. He led her to a quieter corner of the room. There's something I need to tell you. 27 years ago, Daniel really had missed a flight out of this same city, devastated over a lost interview. But what he told her next was the piece she never saw coming. I spent that night talking to a young graphic designer sketching logo concepts while she waited for her own flight. She was the one who convinced me to build my own company instead of chasing someone else's job. Her name was Elizabeth Morgan. Rachel's glass nearly slipped from her hand. Elizabeth Morgan, that was my mother-in-law's name. Daniel nodded slowly. I know. We lost touch after she moved to California. By the time Horizon was successful enough for me to try and find her again, she had already passed. Cancer, Rachel whispered. 10 years ago. Before I ever met her son. She was brilliant, Daniel said. And when one of my talent scouts flagged your work, I recognized the same eye for how visuals carry emotion. When I saw your last name, I did some research, and finding out you'd married into Elizabeth's family felt like life folding back on itself. The woman who had unknowingly shaped Daniel Wright's entire company, and, by extension, this whole impossible weekend, had been Rachel's own children's grandmother. A woman Rachel had never met, whose talent had somehow reached across a decade to find her. There was no time to process it. A commotion broke out near the ballroom entrance, a man's raised voice cutting through the music. Rachel's stomach dropped as she recognized it instantly. Tom. Her ex-husband. Pushing past security, scanning the crowd for her face. What the hell is going on? You were supposed to be at an interview. His voice carried across the suddenly silent room. Rachel stepped forward to cut the scene short. Tom, this isn't the place. How did you even find me? It turned out their babysitter had mentioned Zoe's day at some kids' club in a hotel message. Mason and Blackwell had confirmed the cancelled interview, and Tom had simply called every major hotel in Chicago until one matched. Her sister, worried after days of unanswered texts about money stress, had called him, convinced Rachel might be spiraling. You thought I was having a breakdown, Rachel said, indignant. So you flew here to save me. Daniel stepped in smoothly before it escalated further. Mr. Morgan, I'm Daniel Wright, CEO of Horizon Enterprises. Rachel is our honored guest. Perhaps we can continue this somewhere private. In a quiet side room, the truth finally came out. The summit, the scouting, Rachel's talent, and the opportunity on the table. Tom's suspicion slowly gave way to something Rachel hadn't seen from him in years: respect. Then Daniel told him about his mother. Watching Tom's face soften at the mention of Elizabeth was almost harder for Rachel to witness than the earlier confrontation. She never mentioned any of this, Tom said quietly. Dad always said her design work was just a hobby. It was far more than that, Daniel said. I've always regretted not finding her sooner. Tom looked at Rachel, something shifting behind his eyes. I always thought your design work was just something to fill time until a real career came along, he admitted, an unintentional echo of his own father's dismissal of Elizabeth, generations apart, landing in the same place. Rachel felt the old hurt rise and settle again. Their marriage hadn't broken over one dramatic betrayal, it had eroded under 1,000 small moments exactly like this one. An apology now didn't undo that. After Daniel excused himself, Tom asked to see Zoe before he left and admitted something else. He'd been offered a job in Milwaukee, only 90 minutes from Chicago. Maybe it's meant to be, he offered, like your letter. Rachel didn't return the smile. This isn't a reconciliation, Tom. But for Zoe's sake, she agreed. Maybe it really could mean a better co-parenting arrangement, nothing more. The next morning, with Tom back in Boston, Rachel sat with Daniel to go over the partnership offer in full, creative control over a new division dedicated to brand building for small businesses, a real salary, profit sharing, and enough flexibility to build her schedule around Zoe. Then Daniel slid a folder across the table. Elizabeth left these with me the night we met at the airport. Sketches. Notes on visual communication. I've kept them all these years, waiting for the right moment to pass them on. Inside were pages of yellowed paper covered in flowing handwriting and careful hand-drawn designs, the creative legacy of a woman Rachel had never met, but whose instincts had somehow found their way into her own work without either of them ever knowing why. I wish I had known her, Rachel said softly. In a way, Daniel told her, you do. Creative spirit has a way of echoing through generations, finding new expressions. 3 months later, Rachel stood in her own office overlooking Lake Michigan, Elizabeth's sketches framed on the wall beside her own. Zoe had settled into their new apartment and a new school just 15 minutes from Horizon's headquarters, making friends faster than Rachel had dared hope. Tom had kept his word about Milwaukee, and weekend visits had become a steady, easy rhythm instead of a source of dread. Rachel's new division had already signed 10 clients, with a waiting list growing every week, and a team of 5 designers who shared her belief in honest, human storytelling. As she prepared for an afternoon meeting, her phone buzzed with a text from Mia. Gate C42 at a hair just opened. Ready for our letter adventure. Rachel smiled. Every quarter, Daniel and a handful of trusted colleagues quietly placed 10 sealed letters through Chicago's airports, each one offering an unexpected door to someone who might need it, just as a stranger's kindness had once changed his own life and hers. Today would be Rachel's first time doing it herself. Tucked in her bag was an envelope sealed in blue wax, holding an invitation to Horizon's mentorship program for emerging designers. She had no idea who would find it, or what it might change for them. But then again, neither had she, and look where it had led. Sometimes, Rachel had learned, the most beautiful journeys begin with a missed connection.